And right now, so many things are taking me away, but they're good things. So I wanted to talk with you all this today because I thought it was important that you know that there's advancement in some of the work I have been doing since last year in describing the field that makes up our reality, that you guys feel, but that scientists, especially quantum physicists, um, call the vacuum fluctuation or the 0 point energy field or the ether. So it's been known in physics that that space is not empty for almost 100 years. But it has been ignored because the values of the energy levels are so high. And they are so overwhelming for the physicists that, in general, the physics community has been ignoring this part of quantum field theory. And the result is that we have standard theories of physics now that are very much incomplete. And not only are they incomplete, but they tell us very little about the basis of reality. For instance, we can make very complex calculations about electromagnetic fields and gravitational fields. And of course, magnetic fields. But if you ask a physicist, and I mean an honest physicist, those are more rare. What is the source of charge? Is the source of the electromagnetic field? What is the source of gravity? And again, if the physicist is honest, he will have to answer, we don't know. So that means that we have a beautiful equation given to us by Einstein that everybody knows, E equals mc squared. But since we don't know what m is, mass is, And we certainly don't know why c, or the speed of light, is the speed of light. That means we don't know what E is, or energy. So we have a beautiful equation of equivalence, but we have an equal sign between three unknowns. So we know nothing.
Finally.
He froze.
Guys, it froze.
Because this is the only important thing you have to know.
This is
That's
the
to stay angry.
It's big. It's really adding cost.
Hey.
Rocio.
Oh, okay. He's back.
so since we don't know what energy is, we can make many different errors in the way we think of energy and the way we think of where it comes from, since we don't know where it comes from.
Froze again.
It's remarkable. For instance, we may think that a human being energy comes from the food that they eat. But since we don't say where the energy in the food comes from, what I mean by that is we can't say where the atoms that make the food take their energy. Then saying that the human being takes its energy from the food doesn't tell us anything about where the human being takes its energy. Now, we have a new emerging theory that is telling us something different about math and energy. It's saying that mass and energy coming out of a field of information. And this new theory that I have been writing for 30 years, but that I mostly came up with when I was a Breatharian. Is saying that I mean, I want to clarify that I came up with the conceptual notions of the theory when I was a Breatharian. And then it took me 25 years to write the math for it. Because if you don't write it in Greek on planet Earth, it doesn't count. So the exercise of writing it in mathematics was very useful as well, though, because it gives us the details of how this energy works. And this is very important for many reasons. It's important if we're going to apply this new understanding to technology, but as well, it's important if we're going to apply this new understanding to our body and our health and our consciousness. So what does the theory say? The theory says that there is information exchange between the field, which is more chaotic, and regions in the field where it's organized, coherent. It's organized in these regions of the field because there's spin. Like vortices in the structure of space-time. Just like the spiral on the hand of the gentleman in front there that I'm looking at. Put your hand up. There you go. And so Einstein told us that gravity is the result of space-time curving. But he didn't explain what space-time was made of. Now we're discovering that space-time is full of information. In fact, space-time is electromagnetic bits of information. And where the information is coherent, we call it matter or mass or energy. Now, I want to make clear that this is not just philosophy. When I finish calculating these equations, it gives me the most precise mass for the proton, for the electron, for the radius of the proton. And it was confirmed in accelerators in Switzerland. And so to this day, this theory is the most precise description of the nuclei of atoms and the table of elements on Earth. The standard model is off by 4%. My model for the electrons are precise to very high level of precision. So I'm telling you that matter is organized information in space-time. Because it's a dynamic organization, there's an exchange of information, there's a change in the evolution. You are constantly changing energy levels. And because the information is being exchanged with the field, you are actually informing the field, and the field is informing you continuously. And this resolves another very important problem in physics. That problem is, how come I'm here writing physics? Because you're made of 100 billion atoms. I'm sorry, 100 trillion atoms in each of your cells, and 100 trillion cells make up your body. That is 100 trillion multiplied by 100 trillion. Is the complexity of your existence. And it is continuously staying organized, which is amazing. Any changes in this organization, there is approximately 1,000 billion chemical change every second to keep everything organized. Any changes, any confusion in every second have an extremely bad day very quickly. When physicists calculate the probability of this happening by chance, the possibility are almost zero. Even for one cell to stay self-organized, the probability are 1 to 1 which would be a miracle, to 1 to 10 to the 8,896. Not possible. This is the largest number I've ever calculated or I've ever seen in physics. Just to give you an idea, the universe is extremely large. And the radius of the universe in centimeters is 10 to the 28. So imagine a number that's 10 to the 8,896. This is the probability of one cell staying organized every second. But if information is continuously being exchanged with the field, then it can stay organized. But that means that the universe is not random. But it is learning about itself as it exchanges information with the field. And that's why it can self-organize in very complex systems. You might think, but why is he talking about all this? Well, because if you understand this, you understand the fundamental principles of creation. And the fundamental principles of the energy that keeps you alive. And in fact, from the calculations I've made, the fundamental principles of the consciousness that you call yourself. So, of course, you can ingest food and in a very inefficient way, try to extract the information from the field in the elements that you ingested. Or you can bypass the food and tap into the field energy directly. Since that field is the bio-oscillating structure that keeps you alive. Does that make sense to you guys? So, how would you do that? Well, think of your body as an antenna, as a bio-oscillating antenna. And by the way, just as a side note, if this is true, And now we have a lot of evidence it is true. That means that life is probably everywhere in the universe. I made calculation based on the amount of planets we are finding in our universe currently. And I counted only the planets that would not be too cold or too hot, that are in the right distance from their stars. There's about 40 billion in our galaxy alone. This is 40 billion planets that can have life on. In our galaxy. In the last count, there was, let's see, I think approximately I'm pulling the data because my older self is not as good at remembering as my younger self. The last count on galaxies in our universe is approximately 2 trillion galaxies. So if there is 40 billion habitable planet in each galaxy, then we have approximately 80 billion trillion planets in our universe that have life on it. I don't think we're alone. Just saying, you know? That was just a side note. But how do we apply this to our life every day? Well, we can let this info run on its own. And we can hope that the information feedback gives us a positive result. Or we can become aware of this information loop and influence it to get more of what we want and less of what we don't want. I'm still working on that one. But definitely, it is possible that as you tune your bio-oscillating antenna to higher level of information transfer, higher frequency, then you can transfer more information and have a larger impact on the field. And if you think of the antenna of your body like a radio, you know, in the old radio sets, you had a crystal in there that was oscillating. So think of your body as this crystal oscillating. And you could tune this crystal by turning a dial. And you could tune it to specific channel or frequency. And if you find the right frequency, you could hear the music come up. If you were a little bit off the frequency, then there was a lot of noise. So if your body is the antenna or the crystal oscillating, the biocrystal oscillating, what is the dial? The dial is your state of emotion. Because we know that your state of emotion changes many things in your bio oscillator, like your heart rate, your breathing rate, the chemicals that are moving through your body, even the spinal cord fluid going up into your brain and back down, the electromagnetic fields inside your brain. All this is driven by your state of emotion. So your state of the emotion puts the biocrystal oscillator on the station frequency so that it's clear and a lot of information can come through, or off the frequency so that there's noise and it's very confused. So if you move your state of emotion to the place where it harmonizes to produce the maximum amount of coherency in that region of space, then you can receive massive amount of information from the field. In physics, information and energy are equivalent. So that means that if you tune your bio oscillator just right, you can receive all the energy that's required for you to live and exist without needing to try to extract it from the environment or, you know, the food around you. Now, some people have done this. How many breatharians are at the conference? Quite a bit. Fantastic. Each one is a proof that this can be done. Each one is a proof that energy comes from the field. Are we good? Did you guys miss pieces? So I was saying each Breatharian proves that you can extract energy from the field. And when I mean the field, I don't mean just the field outside of you. I mean the field inside of you. So don't just visualize the field outside of you. Because remember, the atoms that make you are made out of 99.9999999% space. So the field is inside of you. And what you call you is only 0.000000001 of what's there. So by going inside of you, you can access a field of information that connects you to the whole universe. And I mean that literally. I have the mathematics to prove it. Because when you calculate these equations that give this very precise value for the mass of creation, when you calculate how much information is in the field inside the proton, inside the nuclei, you find the information or the mass of all the other protons in the universe, all the other atoms in the universe, information are in one atom. So you have an equation that has the mass of the universe in it. And when you calculate the exchange of information between that atom and the rest of the universe, you get the exact correct value for that atom. So it tells you that that all particles are connected. Everything is entangled through this field of information. This field of information connects. And that's how it can self-organize in very complex systems like a human being. And when the complexity in the biological system is high enough, and enough feedback in the field, then the being becomes self-aware. They know they are who they are. So all this is to say something that the masters and gurus have been saying for a long time. Everything is within you. And within you, you have access to all the information, all the energy in the universe. The difference between me and a guru exactly is that I'm not a guru and I have the math to support those statements. That is a very important thing because it takes it out of dogma and it takes it out of religions. And it brings it into the um, uh, how do you say that word? Cognitive mind. So that it is no longer just a belief, but it is how reality, how the physical world exists. Another important part is that now it can be applied to technology. So that you can have technology that taps into that field of information, that field of energy, and we can have technology that extracts massive amount of energy anywhere you are in the universe. Technology that brings us to the stars and beyond. This is coming to you soon. There is laboratories all around the world working on it with very, very good results. So your world is about to change. You will have a different experience of the universe when you can go and orbit Jupiter for the weekend. It will liberate human. It will birth our civilization into a space civilization, a space colony. This is critical for any evolution on any planet. So that the planetary system is the nest for the birds to grow. But eventually the birds need to learn how to fly. And now we are very, very close. So it has huge implications in technology. It has huge implication in understanding of the universe and mass and energy, and it has huge implication in our understanding of ourself and our relationship with the universe. And more people know this on the planet, more information is exchanged with the fields with this knowingness, easier it gets for the rest of the world to evolve to that new level. So I need every one of you guys, especially all you powerful beings that are able to tap the field, to know this and to support it in your consciousness. Because this transformation is critical for our Earth and our society. So I've been babbling for almost 50 minutes. I'm happy to take questions if you want. I wish I was there with you all, but since we are all connected through this field, so do we have any questions? No, you guys have it all figured. Christiana, how are you, darling?
Yes, very much. Welcome to
Wonderful.
the gathering. People were asking, after the interview for Pranic Consciousness Summit and your conferences here, why did you go back to living on food? So it's not my questions, but it's people's questions.
Okay. I eat one meal a day because when I was Breatharian, I lived in a very isolated situation. I lived in the mountains and in the high deserts in the continental US and Canada. I was extremely isolated, and this was not something I did on purpose. I was involved in my studying, and I felt so high in information pouring through my body that I lost the desire to eat. As well, I only had $2,500 a year to survive. So most of the money was going to put gas in my van so I could move from one climbing area to another. So it was more practical to stop eating. At the time, I knew nothing about Breatharians. I didn't know that other people could do this as well. In fact, at the time, I didn't tell anybody because I was scared they would freak out and, put me in a hospital. I sent a letter to my father that I still have, talking about very strongly reducing the food intake. But that is the only person I told. So when where I was studying, I felt like when I went back into the world, I should start doing like the rest of the world. Not sure that I could continue and all of the things that happen in the normal world. I said as well, yeah, I said as well, I wasn't sure that when I go back in the world from my isolation, that I could continue to feed myself this way with all the stresses and all the things that happen in my life. So I thought it would be best to continue start eating again. And so I ate 3 meals a day for a very long time. I was vegan, you know. And then recently, in the last 2 years, I realized there was other breatharians that were able to be in the world and not eat. So I reduced to 1 meal a day. I have 1 meal a day as well because um, I have my meal at supper with the children that I cook for. But I am planning on eliminating that meal eventually. But I don't know when. I have a very busy life. I will see when. And I would like to do a very specific calculation on how much is extracted from the food and how much energy it takes to extract the energy from the food. And how much energy the body uses during the day if you do a little bit of exercise. And I have a feeling that those things don't add up. So that in general, everybody is extract energy from the field, just at different levels. Any other questions?
Do you have a mic? One moment. Can we give us a mic, please?
Te lo dico in italiano.
Ah, ok, dimmi in italiano.
Volevo chiedere se conosce il fisico italiano Corbucci, che è un po' contraria alla fisica standard, e il vuoto quanto meccanico teorizzato da Corbucci.
Corbucci, ok?
Che mi sembra rassomigli molto a quello che dice lui.
So somebody wants to know if you know an Italian physicist called Corbucci, who's also working on quantum mechanics, and he's very contradictory to mainstream physics and very similar to your work.
Controversial. Oh. No. Do you have the first name?
Corbucci.
No,
The first name. Primo nome. No, he doesn't remember.
Doesn't remember. I don't think so. I don't think so. But can you send me information on him? There's a lot of people, I'm looking him up. There's a lot of people that are starting to write these new physics. It's very exciting. How do you write Corbucci?
C-O
C-O-R?
B
Yeah.
U-C-C-I.
Yeah.
Okay.
B-U-C-C-I.
Massimo Corbucci.
Massimo Corbucci. No, I don't know him. I'm gonna definitely look him up. He's a astronomer.
No, è un fisico, medico e fisico. Medico italiano.
Doctor and
fisico.
physicist. He's a doctor and a physicist.
Thank you very much. I will study it. It's exciting. Everything is changing in the world. When I started in physics, you could not say the C word in a physics conference. It was worse than saying the F word. You could say the F word, but you could not say the C word. The consciousness word. If you said consciousness in a physics conference, you got in all kinds of trouble. Now it's becoming more and more acceptable. In fact, some of the greatest physicists on the planet are trying to understand consciousness now. So it's very exciting. Any more questions?
How would you describe consciousness? Do you have a definition of it? People asking.
Yes, I wrote my first paper in biophysics 2 years ago. And I was able to show that consciousness is most likely the result of information exchange between the field and the atomic structure of your body. But not just the body, meaning the field of your body. Remember, your body is made out of 99.9999999% space. So what I'm showing is that consciousness is not something that you manufacture in your brain, but it's your body in relationship to a field of information. And since there is feedback in the field, meaning you get information and you send information, that means that you get a little bit different set of information than everybody else. For instance, if we all look at this, we all see a different angle. So we all see a little bit different set of information. So that means we all feed a little bit different set of information to the rest of the field. And because there's feedback, then when the field constructs your body, it makes it a little bit different than everybody else because you're giving it a little bit different set of information. And that's why, although we are all humans, although, you know, at your festivals, there might be people that are not quite human there. We all look different. And everybody has different fingerprints, right? Different eyes, right? But we are all contributing to the same reality. We are all contributing our own perspective to the same reality. So consciousness is the exchange of information in the structure of the field. This is why you become self-aware. If this is true, and since I've proven that all matter is a feedback of that field, that means that all matter is consciousness. That means that what we call consciousness or self-awareness is fundamental to the structure of the universe. And that's how systems organize to make complex systems like us that eventually start asking, how did we get here? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Good, good.
Yes.
My question is it this feedback that you have with your emotional crystalline structure is it instantaneous all the time, that feedback? Or does it take like different times? Or what is your point on that?
Okay. That is a very good question. Entanglement of the particles with the field is instantaneous. We can prove that in the laboratory. When particles are entangled, if you tickle this one will laugh, Okay? Instantaneously. It doesn't matter how far they are apart. We have done these experiments where the particles are miles and miles apart, or kilometers and kilometers apart. And when you tickle this one laughs. Instantaneously. No delay. Faster than the speed of light. So the entanglement is instantaneous. However, because the field is dynamically interacting with all things, that is, when you put information in the field, it goes across the whole universe and back. Not only the universe, but the multiverse. Over very, 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 very large distances and scale, there is dampening. And so when you put information in the field there might be some consequences to the information you make that you put in there that take some time before they come back to you. This is what the ancient people called the wheel of karma. And when it comes back to you, you better be ready for it. But what I'm saying is that it's happening continuously. So there's shorter loops and there's longer loops. But for sure, more you are tuned into the field, shorter the feedback. So that there is a very high level feedback where when you increase in consciousness and when you increase in technology. That's why the universe is really fail-safe. Because if you put a lot of self-destructing thoughts in the universe, if you put a lot of chaotic thoughts in the universe, you will eventually self-destruct before you can make too much damage. So, but if you put a lot of constructive and generative thoughts in the universe, you can advance to a civilization that has universal impact, universal influence. I could go in details about the relationship between the instantaneous relationship of the information across the field and the dampening of the feedback. I'm just going to say it in simple terms. The information is entangled instantaneously, but there's restriction on how much information can come out of the boundary structure. And that's why it takes time for the material world to react.
Can you ask him about
Yeah.
About Nassim? What do you think about physical body and astral body, soul? What we call soul. How do you distinguish physical body and what we call our soul?
Our soul.
Our soul.
You can imagine that the 99.999% space that you're made of is what you call your soul. So that, you know, when you so-called die, nothing really dies. Every atom that you were ever made of is still around. It has just changed state. That is, the atoms that made you reorganized. But the information in the space is still there.
But does the soul has identity? Does it live forever, as our gurus say, and then is incarnated life after life? So the soul is permanent, and incarnations are coming and going.
Well, okay, this is what I was saying. Even matter is permanent, right? You can't get rid of the atoms. So of course the soul is permanent, and it is coherent because it has coherency, because the field information that you are cannot go away. It just changes state, right? So it can organize in certain ways at certain state, in certain state, and then change state. But it is always coherent. No energy can be lost. No information can be lost, right? In fact, some of the technology we're developing now in my laboratories and others is showing that eventually we don't even have to have the atoms of our body disorganize and change bodies. We can just keep the one we have. And there is actually no reasons for cell to disorganize or become decoherent. And that has to do with the water molecule and how the water molecule oscillates the DNA structure. No, we're getting very close to that. Does that answer your question? sort of. Wow, tough crowd.
Um, do you know how you can influence the time frame between what you put out and you get what you get from? You said there is a time frame, but sometimes instant manifestation is happening.
Yeah. So, that's what I was saying. When you get higher level of information flow, it gets more and more coherent. Then you become more and more capable of influencing the field to give you instant feedback. So people notice, for instance, as they rise in consciousness, that there's more and more coincidence, right? There's more and more like moments where it's this instant, so it's because when you start to have more and more influence on the field, then the field reacts faster and faster because there's literally more energy in it. So it's able to coordinate, create coherency much faster. So, you hopefully get that positive feedback most of the time. Then sometimes a little bit of negative feedback, which is, when you learn the most. So I'm going to have to let you guys go. So much love to you guys.
Nassim, one last question.
Yes.
A tough one, maybe, from someone here. What is love?
Yeah, just an easy question to finish with, right? Well, let me just say that as far as relationship goes, I'm still working on that. It's much more complicated than quantum physics. But if we're talking about universal love, I think that what we call love, what we call universal love, or even the love between two beings or multiple beings, I think that it's the result of the field, the experience of the field experiencing itself. It's a result of the field that you're made of feeling large amount of empathy, large amount of connectivity with fields outside itself that are a reflection of the fields inside themselves. I think that is love. I feel it. I feel it for all living things and non-living things. Even my car. So I think as well in you know, sexual union, this feedback can be so strong, it can bring very high level of awareness and consciousness to the beings. And you know, the exchange can be so strong that it produces coherency in the universe. And based, what was that? Orgasm and what? Right. I mean, enlightenment is definitely orgasmic. From my experience, but it definitely is a process. It's definitely a process. It's a continuous process, right? But yeah. So you can imagine that just like a butterfly can produce a hurricane on the other side of the planet just by batting its wings, you know. Two beings, or even one being, creating a perfect tantric union, I believe, can create galaxies in another universe. So I tell you goodbye, my galactic beings. Much love, much love.